Welcome back to the deep dive. If you live anywhere in the developed world, you probably don't spend a lot of time thinking about when your lights will come on.
Or if your grid will fail tomorrow.
Exactly. But for hundreds of millions of people across Africa, that daily uncertainty, that unreliability, is a massive, fundamental obstacle to any form of sustained economic development.
The energy sectors in many African nations are just notoriously inefficient.
And the supply is inconsistent, access is deeply unequal. I mean, these aren't just minor inconveniences.
No, they're systemic challenges. They hold back entire economies and contribute directly to poor global competitiveness across the region.
Okay, so let's unpack this. Our deep dive today is focused on two interconnected concepts. First, how artificial intelligence, or AI, can fundamentally revolutionize this sector.
And accelerate Africa's energy transition.
And second, this crucial insight from our sources that technology is really only half the battle. The real secret weapon, the thing that unlocks the AI potential, is mastering what the sources call collaborative governance.
It's an absolutely fascinating intersection of, cutting-edge technology and decades-old political economics. What's so interesting here is that AI isn't just about making things slightly better.
It's transformative.
It is. It offers truly transformative solutions. We're talking about tools like predictive analytics that can anticipate equipment failure days ahead of time, smart grids that dynamically balance supply and demand in real time, and advanced forecasting that makes integrating huge solar or wind farms reliable. These advances dramatically enhance reliability, reduce costs, and critically expand access to people who currently have none.
And that, in turn, opens up massive new markets.
Instantly, for both large international firms and, crucially, for domestic businesses, too.
To really appreciate the scale of this challenge, you have to look at the numbers.
They're staggering.
Globally, 666 million people still lack basic electricity access. But when we dove into the sources, this fact just jumped out at us.
The concentration.
Exactly. Approximately 85% of those people, that's around 566 million, are concentrated exclusively in sub-Saharan Africa. That level of concentration completely changes how you approach the problem.
It does. It's not a scattered global issue. It's a localized humanitarian and economic crisis.
And it requires targeted, transformative solutions.
And that lack of access is compounded by a lack of sustainable infrastructure.
Yeah.
If you connect this to sustainability, the disparity in installed renewable capacity is just, well, it's staggering.
Okay, what are we talking about?
Sub-Saharan Africa manages only about 40 watts per capita of installed renewable power. Now, you compare that to the global average of 478 watts, or over 1,100 in developed economies.
Wow, that's a chasm.
The chasm, and it highlights why we need something beyond just standard grid expansion. We need AI to fundamentally change the efficiency in the distribution model.
So the promise is clear. AI can increase reliability, cut costs, enhance access, and improve sustainability. But here's the key question, right? If the tech is ready, why is adoption so slow?
That's the core challenge.
Why do these state-owned utilities often resist these upgrades? It sounds like we have a profound governance problem, which is what we need to unpack.
That's it, exactly. The resistance isn't always technological, it's systemic. Which brings us to collaborative governance.
Okay.
Forget the formal definition for a minute. Just think of it as inviting the private sector, the people with the money and the AI expertise, to sit at the government's table.
Not just to advise, but to
actually collectively decide and implement how public energy assets or policy goals are achieved. It's consensus-oriented.
Which is not how it's worked historically.
Not at all. Energy in Africa has been overwhelmingly dominated by national, often state-owned providers. That's the hard approach to governance. Strict, centralized, a public monopoly.
And the poster child for this is Eskom in South Africa.
A perfect, though painful example. Eskom generates roughly 95% of South Africa's electricity, and historically a massive 45% of the entire continent's power.
So the public sector holds all the cards, traditionally.
Right, but the massive governance challenges there. The debt, the operational failures, have resulted in chronic load shedding. The centralized, hard system, despite its scale, has largely failed the public.
And this failure leads to what the sources call a negative sum condition. That sounds like jargon, but it's a fundamental problem, isn't it?
It is. A negative sum condition simply means that when the state-owned enterprise fails, say Eskom can't supply reliable power, the private sector looks at that gap and says, I'm not touching that risk.
You uncertain.
Exactly. The public sector gap isn't filled, and the public suffers. It's a lose-lose situation that just feeds on itself.
So the shift that's required is to complement that hard regulation, the laws, the police power, with what they call soft steering tools. What does that actually look like for an energy company?
So soft steering is all about using non-coercive tools, material incentives, to encourage voluntary private sector participation.
Okay, give me an example.
Well, hard regulation is the police officer writing you a ticket for speeding. Soft steering in this context might be the government offering, say, tax breaks or guaranteed long-term power purchase agreements.
Which makes it financially irresistible.
Precisely. For a private firm to deploy an AI-enabled mini-grid in a rural area. And when governments do this well, it creates synergistic positive sum effects. Businesses make money, and the government achieves its public goals faster, more reliably, and often without funding the innovation itself.
That model, that virtuous cycle, is really compelling. But even with the right governance philosophy, deploying technology faces massive real-world friction. Huge friction. Our sources introduce 4 major constraints that are stopping this from taking off. Let's start with the most obvious one.
Barrier 1 is foundational: AI infrastructure and energy access itself. And we keep circling back to that 85% statistic for a reason.
You can't get away from it.
You can't. Reliable electricity and robust digital infrastructure, fiber optics, reliable cellular networks, are the non-negotiable prerequisites for AI. AI needs consistent, massive streams of real-time data.
Right. If your facility is load shedding for 6 hours a day, the AI tool on your grid isn't getting the data it needs to be smart.
It's a catch-22. You need energy to deploy the technology that optimizes the energy sector. That's a massive initial hurdle, especially in remote regions.
And the money to build that infrastructure leads right to barrier 2, financial constraints.
Of course, it's incredibly difficult for African governments to divert finite resources from immediate existential priorities, vaccines, food relief, basic education, toward long-term AI innovation.
The payoff from AI just feels too distant.
It feels too abstract to prioritize over feeding the population today.
That's understandable. But what about international investment? We hear a lot about green finance flowing globally. Why isn't that filling the gap?
Well, it should in theory, but the sources show a pretty concerning trend. Global clean energy finance for Africa actually dropped. It fell from $28.4 billion in 2016 to $21.6 billion in 2023.
That's a significant drop.
It is, and what funding is left is heavily concentrated. We looked at the recipients, and really only South Africa and Nigeria ranked among the top global recipients.
So if you're a smaller nation, say Zambia or Ghana, you're competing for a smaller pot of money against these massive economies.
Exactly, which means the disparity in access just gets wider and wider.
Ah.
And even when the money is theoretically there, we hit barrier 3. Regulatory uncertainty.
Right. Imagine you're a major multinational ready to commit, say, $500 million to a smart grid system over 20 years.
You need predictability.
And that's exactly what's missing.
Correct. Frequent, unpredictable shifts in laws, changes in taxation policy overnight. That just kills long-term commitment. Why risk it? We mentioned ESCOM. The recurring governance challenges there eroded investor confidence, not just in South Africa, but in regional projects generally.
And we see that reflected in broader metrics, right? Like the World Bank's Doing Business Index.
Yeah, the region's average score was just 51.8 out of 100 in 2020. And that number represents the daily bureaucratic and regulatory frustration that private firms face.
So it makes that soft steering almost impossible because the fundamental hard rules that you need for trust are too wobbly.
Exactly. And finally, barrier 4, which is maybe the most solvable but often overlooked: AI literacy and human capital.
The people on the ground.
The people. You can ship the most advanced AI hardware to a facility, but the real intelligence transfer happens with the people who have to run it.
You can't just install a recommendation engine and walk away.
No. I mean, take Edgecom Energy's AI Copilot. It gives real-time recommendations for energy adjustments. But those complex insights are only valuable if the facility managers and technicians have the training and the confidence to interpret and apply them.
Otherwise, the technology just becomes an expensive paperweight.
An expensive paperweight that confirms the view that this stuff is too abstract for immediate priorities. It's a workforce development challenge, first and foremost.
That really drives it home. So let's pivot and look at the strategic opportunities that get created when better governance manages to clear these obstacles. We are seeing specific, positive sum examples working right now.
Let's start with international businesses. or MNEs.
Mm?
They bring the capital and the scale. Partnerships between state-owned firms and global firms are essential.
For technology transfer.
Absolutely. For instance, ABB's investment in EdgeCom allows the energy company to use real-time data to optimize existing systems. That's a classic soft steering success. The government gets more efficiency without having to fund the innovation itself.
And some companies are just bypassing the centralized grids entirely.
They are. They're directly addressing the service gaps.
Mm.
Look at Husk Power Systems. Their whole model is based on hybrid mini-grids, combining solar and biomass to provide off-grid electricity in rural areas of Asia and Africa.
Serving areas the hard system completely ignored.
It's purely positive sum. And then you have the domestic businesses, who have a distinct edge.
Familiarity. Trust within the communities.
Exactly. They know the social customs, the local risks. Energy Access in Kenya is a great model. They partnered with a data firm, Atlas AI, that uses predictive data satellite imagery, anonymized mobile phone data, to identify and target rural consumers most likely to convert to solar.
So they're using AI just to find their customer.
They're using it to solve that fundamental business challenge in remote areas where traditional market research just fails.
So what does this all mean for African governments? They have to be the enablers here. What are the levers they need to pull to accelerate this?
Well, the first lever is strengthening that hard regulatory foundation, standardization across borders. The African Continental Free Trade Area, FCF, it should. And by working with the African Organization for Standardization, RACA, FCFTA, helps harmonize the technical standards. That reduces barriers, makes the market bigger, and lowers the risk for every M&E looking to expand.
A unified market is always more appealing than 54 fragmented ones. But governments also have to look internally, right? We saw huge differences in their national AI strategies.
We did. South Africa's policy, for example, really emphasizes talent and ethics. Kenya's is more focused on building out digital infrastructure and linking AI to sustainable development goals.
Very different priorities.
But the key is that these unique national frameworks have to be tightly integrated with their foreign investment and economic development policies. They need to send a clear signal to investors.
And finally, let's talk creative financing, because this is where Africa has really innovated.
Absolutely. I'm talking about the pay-as-you-go or PAG models. They integrate solar hardware with mobile payment systems.
Which makes off-grid energy accessible to millions of households who were locked out of traditional bank financing.
It's collaboration in action fintech meets energy access. Nithio, a climate fintech firm, helped over 400,000 people get access in 2023 alone using this model. They're using AI to risk manage loans for microenergy projects.
Turning unbankable customers into reliable clients. And on the flip side of these small, decentralized solutions, we also have massive national projects.
Right, like Ethiopia's Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, the GERD. It's a 6,450 milliW hydropower project, an enormous baseload capacity source.
So how does AI play in there?
A project that big creates huge opportunities for AI-enabled grid optimization and managing regional electricity trade. AI can model water flow, predict energy spikes, and manage the complexity of selling that power across multiple national grids.
It's clear this is a multiplayer game. You've got national governments, regional organizations like FCFTA, African firms like MCOPI, multinationals like ABB, all working together.
It's an entire ecosystem built on trust. And to synthesize everything, the success of Africa's energy transition really hinges on governments mastering that balance between hard regulation, like clear rules through FCFTA, and soft steering tools, like incentives for PAYG models.
That governance shift is the key.
It's the difference between stagnation and rapid growth.
Absolutely. Thank you for walking us through all that.
Yeah.
It's clear the policy landscape is incredibly dynamic, and African countries are not all at the same stage, which makes this so much more interesting.
Definitely not a one-size-fits-all solution.
Which brings us to our final thought. If collaborative governance is the indispensable key to unlocking continent-wide AI solutions, this raises a crucial tension for the future. How much must African countries homogenize their standards through large agreements like FCFTA to create that massive appealing market versus prioritizing unique, locally tailored policies like Kenya's specialized AI strategy to immediately address their own specific urgent energy needs? We'll leave you with that thought for your next deep dive.